I knew something was wrong the moment my mother-in-law walked into the Christmas party with a woman I'd never seen before, because she introduced her to my husband like I wasn't even standing there. And the worst part? He played along. Smiled. Acted surprised. As if I hadn't spent the last 7 years building a life with him. People always say you feel betrayal in your chest. For me? It was quiet. Cold. Like clicking into a different version of myself, one that didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't ask why. I just watched the performance unfold, every fake laugh and stolen glance confirming the truth I had already uncovered weeks before. My husband was cheating. His mother was helping. And both of them thought I'd swallow it. They didn't know I had all the evidence. They didn't know the house was in my name. And they definitely didn't know what I planned to do next. My name is Ava Carter, and for the longest time, I genuinely believed I had built something close to perfect. 7 years with Noah felt safe, predictable in a comforting way, like a life that was steadily heading somewhere. I ran a successful marketing agency that I built from the ground up, long nights, brutal clients, and enough wins to make the struggle worth it. Noah liked telling people he was proud of me. I liked believing him. He worked as a financial advisor at his father's firm, the Carter Group, a place where everyone's title was inherited and office politics moved at the speed of family gossip. Still, Noah was good at his job, and for years, I thought we were a solid team. I made money, he made money, and we were building a future together. That was the story I repeated to myself over and over. But there's always a moment, the very first tiny moment, when the story stops making sense. For me, it started with small things. Noah staying late for client dinners he never talked about. Showering the second he got home, even when he said he'd been at the office all day. Turning his phone face down, laughing at messages he wouldn't show me, then saying, "It's nothing, Ava. You're overthinking." I wasn't overthinking. I was noticing. And then there was Victoria, my mother-in-law, who had never even tried to hide her disappointment that Noah married someone outside the circle. She never said it outright, but I could hear it in her tone, feel it in the way she scanned my clothes, my background, my achievements, as if any of it mattered less because I didn't come from a family with a last name that opened doors. She always had comments, small and polished like little knives. "She's sweet, Noah, but you're a Carter. You need someone who understands that world." Or my personal favorite, "Ava, you're so independent." Some men find that threatening. I hope Noah doesn't. I used to think she was just tone deaf. Later, I would realize she was planting seeds. It got worse around month 7 of Noah's busy season. He became oddly attentive, bringing home flowers for no reason, praising the smallest things I did, acting like he had rediscovered affection he'd misplaced somewhere. Some women might call that romantic. I call it camouflage. Meanwhile, Victoria kept dropping the same name into conversation. "Do you remember Sophia Lane? Brilliant girl. Comes from a wonderful family. I must introduce her to the right people soon." She said it so casually that most people wouldn't have noticed. But the repetition, that stayed with me. Every time she brought up this mythical, perfect girl, Noah's shoulders would tighten just a little. It was subtle, but I'd been married long enough to see it. Then came the moment everything clicked. One night, Noah left his phone on the bathroom counter while he showered. It buzzed twice. Normally, I don't check his messages, I never had a reason to. But when a preview lit up with a name I'd heard too often from Victoria's mouth, my hands moved before my brain caught up. "Can't wait to meet your family tomorrow." Sophia read heart, my whole body went cold. Not angry. Not heartbroken. Just, cold. Because the truth wasn't surprising, it was confirming. And when confirmation hits, something in you changes. You stop looking for excuses and start seeing the map, every lie, every shift in behavior, every coincidence that now wasn't a coincidence at all. Victoria hadn't just praised Sophia. She had curated her. She had groomed her. She had hand-delivered her to my husband. I put the phone down exactly where it had been and walked out of the bathroom like nothing happened. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't slam a door. Instead, I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and made a decision. If they were going to treat this like a game, then I would play too. But I would play smarter. The next morning, I contacted a private investigator, Evan Torres, recommended by a client who once said, "He finds things you didn't even know were missing." Evan was straightforward, calm, and didn't ask unnecessary questions. He simply said, "Give me 3 weeks." He only needed 10 days. When he came back with the evidence, the file was thick enough to feel heavy in my hands. Photos, receipts, timestamps, everything. Noah and Sophia weren't just seeing each other, they were dating openly in places Victoria frequented. Dinner parties at Victoria's house. Business events that didn't exist. A weekend trip marketed as a corporate retreat that was actually a 2-night stay at a boutique hotel. But the detail that made me sit down was this: Victoria had personally introduced them at a charity gala. And she had hosted multiple dinners where Sophia sat next to my husband, while Victoria told everyone I was out of town. I stared at the report for a long time, not because of shock, but because of how calculated it all was. Victoria didn't just want me gone. She wanted me erased. And yet, the longer I sat there, the more a strange calm settled in. No tears. No shaking hands. No dramatic heartbreak. Just clarity. I started reviewing every legal document Noah and I had ever signed. The prenup was airtight, my lawyer had insisted on it before our wedding and thank God I'd listened. All my business assets stayed mine. Every property I purchased before the marriage stayed mine. Including the house we lived in, the one Victoria bragged about to her friends, the one she assumed her son owned. He didn't. I did. By the end of the night, I had opened a new personal account, redirected my income, changed every password Noah shouldn't have had, and scheduled a meeting with my lawyer, Maya, who happened to be Evan's sister. And through all of this, I didn't say a word to Noah. Silence is terrifying when it comes from the person you're betraying. It means they're thinking. It means they're planning. And I was. Victoria, meanwhile, believed she was orchestrating the perfect reveal, the moment she'd finally watch her son replace me with the woman she approved of. But she had no idea I had already begun preparing for a Christmas she would never forget. Christmas at the Carter estate was always extravagant, but that year it felt less like a holiday gathering and more like a stage Victoria had been preparing for months. I knew she would pull something bold, she wasn't the subtle type. What I didn't expect was the level of confidence she walked in with, like she was finally ready to reveal her masterpiece. I arrived early, dressed intentionally, simple, elegant, untouchably calm. The kind of calm that makes people wonder what you know. And they wondered. Every relative I greeted looked at me with an odd mix of warmth and anticipation, like they could feel something simmering underneath the holiday cheer. Victoria hovered near the entrance, eyes flicking toward the door every few seconds. She wasn't waiting for me. She was waiting for her star. And right on cue, the door opened, and in walked Sophia. She looked exactly like the version Victoria had been advertising for months, polished, charming, effortlessly put together in a way that screamed approved by the Carters. She seemed nervous, though, her smile a little too tight, her steps a little unsure. Noah saw her and launched into the worst acting performance I've ever witnessed. "Oh, Sophia. Wow, I didn't expect to see you here," he said, like he hadn't spent the last 3 months meeting her behind my back. I stood at his side, hands folded loosely, expression unreadable. He kept glancing at me, waiting for anger, jealousy, anything. He got nothing. That unsettled him more than if I'd thrown a drink in his face. Victoria swooped in before anyone could say another word. "Everyone, this is Sophia Lane," she announced proudly, like she was presenting a prize she'd raised herself. "She's absolutely brilliant. Harvard educated. Comes from a wonderful family. Truly exceptional." I tilted my head slightly. "Victoria, you've mentioned her so many times I feel like I already know her." My tone was sweet enough, but the meaning underneath made Noah stiffen beside me. Victoria ignored it and continued her performance. She and Noah have so much in common. It's rare to meet someone who fits so naturally. I smiled. "Oh? Naturally? That's interesting." Noah cleared his throat. "Ava, come on, don't start." "Start what?" I asked softly. "I'm just observing." Sophia, to her credit, looked uncomfortable. She kept fidgeting, eyes darting between me, Noah, and Victoria like she'd walked into something she hadn't been fully prepared for. At one point, she leaned toward Victoria and whispered, loud enough for half the room to hear, "Are you sure this is a good idea? You didn't tell me she would be here." The room shifted. Victoria placed a firm hand on her arm and said, "Don't worry, dear. It's time everyone saw the truth clearly." Everyone saw something, all right. Just not what she expected. Dinner was an exercise in strategic tension. Victoria kept praising Sophia's intelligence, her upbringing, her values, each compliment exaggerated and pointed directly at me. Noah sat stiffly, barely eating, checking his phone as if he could escape through the screen. At some point, Uncle Jack, the only Carter with a functioning moral compass, launched into an unsolicited story about a coworker who cheated on his wife and lost everything because he was a damn fool. Silence. Pure, sharp silence. Victoria's fork clattered against her plate. Noah choked on his wine. I almost laughed. And then she snapped. Victoria stood, lifting her glass like she was about to toast, but her voice came out with the force of a confession she'd been dying to shout. "Sophia will be the perfect woman for Noah," she declared proudly. "Especially after he divorces Ava." The room froze. Someone gasped. Someone else muttered something like, "What the hell," under their breath. Even the holiday music seemed to pause. I didn't react, not the way she wanted me to. Instead, I smiled. Warm. Polite. Sharp enough to cut glass. Victoria. I said calmly, did you tell Sophia the house she's standing in is legally mine? Or that the prenup prevents Noah from claiming any part of my assets? Her face drained of color so fast it was almost impressive. Sophia blinked. What, prenup? Oh, I said gently, he didn't mention that part? The shift in the room was immediate. Whispers. Stares. Noah's breath caught like he'd forgotten how lungs worked. I reached into my handbag, pulled out the thick folder Evan had prepared, and placed it on the table in front of Victoria with a soft thud. This, I continued, is the timeline of Noah's affair. Every receipt. Every hotel. Every message. All color-coded. I'm sure you'll appreciate the organization. Victoria looked like she might faint. Noah looked like he wished he had. And, I added, tapping the folder lightly, your role in arranging their meetings? That's in here too. Evan did excellent work. A ripple ran through the table. Shock. Embarrassment. A sense of collective realization that the Carter matriarch had just been publicly dethroned. Sophia stepped back from Noah like he was contagious. You told me you weren't married. You said it was complicated. I kept my voice soft, almost sympathetic. Men like him love complicated. It gives them room to lie. Victoria tried to speak but nothing came out. I stood, smoothing the front of my dress, my calmness now almost cruel in its precision. If you were going to humiliate me tonight, I said, you should have planned better. And with that, I placed my hand on the folder once more, looked Victoria directly in the eyes, and finished, consider this my turn. Then I sat down, perfectly composed, while the room erupted around us, Noah stammering, Sophia crying, Victoria collapsing into her chair, because the show she thought she was directing had just been rewritten. By me. The moment the folder hit the table, everything unraveled exactly the way I knew it would. Not loudly. Not explosively. Quietly, like a house of cards collapsing in slow, humiliating motion. I opened the folder with a calmness that seemed to terrify Noah more than the evidence itself. I pulled out the first set of photographs. Evan had taken them from far enough away to be discreet but close enough that no one could question who the people were. This, I said, sliding the first photo across the table toward Victoria, is Noah and Sophia leaving La Belle on October 12th. You told me he was at a business conference in Chicago that week, remember? Noah's jaw locked. Sophia's eyes widened. Victoria's hand trembled just enough for me to see it. I placed the next photo in front of them. And this one, November 3rd. The day you told your entire extended family Noah was working overtime because the market was unstable. The room was so quiet the sound of paper sliding across the table felt loud. I reached back into the folder and pulled out the stack of receipts, color-coded and clipped neatly. These are the transactions from our joint account. Dinners, hotel stays, ride shares. All paid with our shared cards. Sophia stared at the pages like they might burn her fingertips. He told me he was single, she whispered. He said you were separated. I nodded. That's what men say when they need a clean story and a convenient listener. Her face crumpled, not out of guilt, but realization. She wasn't a mastermind. She was a pawn. And the person moving her wasn't Noah. It was Victoria. I watched that realization wash over her. It landed hard. I held up the printed timeline Evan created. And finally, these are Noah's schedules for the past 3 months. Every lie, every alibi, every night he claimed he was working late. Noah stood up abruptly. Ava, stop. This is ridiculous, sit down, George, his father, barked. It startled everyone, including me. Victoria snapped toward her husband. George, you have no idea, Victoria, he said again, louder, sit down. The matriarch of the Carter family actually listened. That was when I saw the real shift. The moment the power dynamic flipped. Victoria, who had orchestrated this entire show, was suddenly the one being silenced. Not by me. But by her own husband, who was finally seeing what she had built behind his back. I straightened the stack of papers, my voice steady. Just to be clear, I didn't come here to fight. I'm simply presenting facts. Facts I've already sent to my attorney. Noah's face went pale. Your attorney? Yes, I said. The divorce papers are ready. You could feel the shock ripple through the room. I also filed to separate our accounts last week. So anything you've charged recently? I glanced at the receipts. That's all on you now. Victoria's mouth fell open. You can't do that. I already did. And the house, she sputtered, desperation leaking into her voice. Is mine, I said evenly. Purchased before the wedding. Protected under the prenup you insisted I sign but never bothered to read. That one hit her like a slap. It was almost poetic. Noah ran a hand over his face. Ava, please. Can we just talk? Just us? We are talking, I said softly. This is the first honest conversation we've had in months. Sophia wiped at her eyes. Ava? I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. She told me, she hesitated, glancing fearfully at Victoria. She told me you were controlling. That you and Noah were basically done. That he needed support. I looked at her carefully. For once, she wasn't lying. She was just young, naive, and groomed by someone who knew exactly how to manipulate insecurities. It's okay, I said. You believed the wrong person. It happens. Victoria slammed her palm on the table. Don't paint yourself as some saint, Ava. Noah deserves happiness. He deserves someone who understands his world. And you decided that was your call to make? I asked quietly. Her mouth opened to argue, but George cut her off sharply. Enough, Victoria. You've embarrassed this family enough for one night. She froze, because George had never, in all the years I'd known him, spoken to her like that. Noah stepped forward suddenly, eyes glossy, voice cracking. Ava, I made a mistake. I know I messed up. Please, don't do this. Don't throw us away. I'll fix it. I'll end everything with Sophia. Just, give me another chance. I waited for something, anger, pity, regret, but nothing came. There was just emptiness. And in that emptiness, peace. Noah, I said gently, I'm not leaving because you cheated. I'm leaving because you lied. Repeatedly. And because you let your mother choreograph your entire private life like you were a child who couldn't make decisions. He stepped closer, voice breaking. Ava, please, I'm done, I said simply. And I'm leaving this family tonight. His knees buckled, and before I realized what he was doing, he dropped to the floor in front of me. Actually dropped to his knees. The room went silent again. Sophia gasped. Victoria looked horrified. George looked ashamed. Ava, Noah begged, please. Don't leave. Don't do this to us. Don't do this to me. For a split second, I saw the man I married, the one I once believed in. But the second passed quickly. I shook my head. You did this to yourself. I picked up my bag, gathered the folder, and stepped back from him. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. Then, without another word, I walked toward the door. My heels on the marble floor echoed louder than any screaming match ever could. And that silence, heavy, absolute, was the most devastating parting gift I could have left them. I didn't turn around. Not once. Because some endings don't need dramatic exits. Some endings are strongest when wrapped in quiet. I stepped outside and let the cold air hit me, clean, sharp, honest in a way the Carter family never was. As I walked to my car, I thought about everything that had just unfolded, and everything that was still coming. Because the story wasn't finished. And what happened next only proved one thing: silence is the most powerful weapon a person can wield. Divorce became less of a battle and more of a formality once the evidence came out. Everything was so clear, so indisputable, that even Noah's attorney told him to settle quietly. My lawyer, Maya, said it was one of the cleanest cases she'd handled. No court fights. No drawn-out negotiations. Just signatures and a final acknowledgement that our marriage had ended long before the paperwork did. Victoria, however, didn't go down quietly. For weeks, she told anyone who would listen that I had manipulated the situation, that I had set Noah up, that I was secretly controlling and vindictive. But her version never stuck. Not when the truth was so solidly documented. Not when the photos and receipts were already circulating among their relatives like wildfire. And then Sophia left town, and took the last piece of Victoria's credibility with her. Before she moved back to Boston, Sophia met with George and the rest of the Carter family. She told them everything. Every lie Victoria fed her. Every manipulative nudge. Every conversation where Victoria painted me as unstable and desperate just to justify forcing Sophia into Noah's life. Hearing it from Sophia, the one person Victoria thought she could mold, was the final blow. Suddenly, the Carter relatives who once worshipped Victoria began distancing themselves. Conversations stopped happening in front of her. Decisions were made without her input. The family matriarch, the woman who had once controlled everything, was now met with strained smiles and cold politeness. Losing power, for someone like Victoria, was the harshest punishment she could imagine. Noah didn't fare much better. His reputation at the firm took a hit after employees learned he'd used company trips as cover for his affair. Clients stopped trusting him. His father pulled him from major accounts. And socially, he became a cautionary tale, the guy who let his mother run his marriage straight into the ground. He looked exhausted the last time I saw him. Not thinner. Not healthier. Just dimmer. A few months after the divorce was finalized, he asked to meet. I agreed, partly because I needed closure, and partly because I wanted to hear the apology without all the theatrics that had surrounded our last conversation. He sat across from me in a small coffee shop, hands clasped, eyes tired. Ava, he said quietly, I'm sorry. For everything. For letting my mom interfere. For lying. For hurting you. I know nothing I say fixes it, but I need you to know I understand what I lost. For a moment, I felt the echo of what we once had. Not longing, just acknowledgement. Recognition that we were once good before we weren't. I forgive you, I said. And I meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back. He nodded, and the sadness that washed over him was real. But it wasn't my responsibility anymore. His healing, his consequences, that was all his. Not mine. Life didn't magically heal after that, but it did settle. I focused on my business. Rebuilt my routines. Redecorated the house in ways that felt like me instead of us. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of peace that feels earned. And then, almost a year later, peace turned into something warmer. I met Daniel, Evan's older brother, at a charity event Maya invited me to. A doctor, calm and grounded in a way that felt like standing next to a lake at sunrise. No chaos. No ego. No hovering mother or hidden agenda. He didn't treat me like I was fragile or complicated. He treated me like a whole person, someone worth understanding slowly. Our conversations flowed easily, comfortably. We laughed, shared stories, compared the absurdity of our past relationships. Being with him felt like breathing normally for the first time in years. There were no red flags. No guessing games. No quiet dread. Just steadiness. Just kindness. Just us. And one night, when we were sitting together after a late dinner, he said something simple that stayed with me: you don't have to fight for peace when you choose someone who protects it with you. That was when I knew my life had finally shifted into something right. Looking back on everything, the lies, the affair, the manipulation, the public meltdown, I realized one truth that carried me through every decision afterward: sometimes you don't need revenge. You just need the truth, and silence at the right moment.